In this tutorial, we're going to be making this wooden stool in Blender. I'm going to be using a few resources online. I'm going to be using this Wood06 on cgbookcase.com. Link will be in the video description for this. And I'll also be using this HDRI on HDRI Haven. The link will be in the video description for this as well. I'm just going to download 1K. And for the wood texture, I'm just going to be downloading the 2K version, but you could also download 3K or 4K or 1K, whatever you want to do. So you can download these, or you can get your own textures, and let's jump into Blender. Okay, so I'm just going to turn on screencast keys really quick. So I'll just go over here, just add the screencast keys so you can see what buttons I'm pressing down here. I'm also going to be doing this in cycles render. And let's just start by deleting everything. So I'll just select everything, and I'll just delete it. And then let me just zoom in here. And the timeline, we're not going to be using the timeline at all. So I'm just going to grab right here, pull it up, and then pull it down and let go just to close the timeline, just to give us a little more space. So I'll press Shift-A, and I'm going to add a circle. And I'll tab into edit mode, and I'll press E and extrude that up. And then I'll press Z, so it'll be only moving on the Z axis. And just bring it up something like this. And then I'll press E, and then press S, and scale it in a little bit. Just like that, and then I'll press F to fill that face, and then I'll do the same thing for the bottom. So I'll just press Alt and click on this loop right here, press E and then S, and scale it down, just something like that, and then press F to fill that face. And then it looks like the normals need to be recalculated, so I'm just going to select everything and press Shift N, and then let's add a subsurf modifier on this to smooth it out. So I'll press Control 2 to add a subsurf modifier, and then I'll just press W and shade smooth. I use right click to select, so I just use W to hit shade smooth. You might need to just go object and shade smooth. I do want to give this a little bit more vertices because right here there's a little bit of stretching and it could look a bit nicer. So I'll tab into edit mode and I'll press Control R to add a loop cut, and I'll scroll my mouse wheel up so that we'll have 2 loop cuts, and I'll just click, and then I want to scale these up a bit, so I'll press S and Z and just scale that up so it's a lot closer to the edge there. I just want to make everything a little bit thinner, so I'm just going to select everything, press S and Z, and just make it a little bit thinner. Let's save our project, so I'm just going to hit Control S to save our project, and I'll just save this as woodenstool.blend. Just click Save as Image. Okay, and now I'm going to start making the legs, so I'm going to press Shift-A. Let's just add a cube. I'm going to go 7 on the number pad for top view, and then I'll tab into edit mode, and I'm just going to press Z and move my mouse over to go into wireframe, and then let's just scale this down, and I think something like that is pretty good, and then I'll just press G and pull it out over about here, and now I'm going to press 3 for face select. I'll just move out of the top view, click on this face, and then I'll press 7 again to go back into top view, and then I'll just press G and move it inside the stool. So something probably about right there. And then this looks really funky, but what we're going to do is click on the bottom face right here. I'm going to press 1 for side view, for front side view. Front side view. I'm going to hit 1 on the number pad to go to front view, and then I can press G and Z. So this is going to be the leg of the stool. I think it's going to look good probably around, I'm going to do like 1, 2, 3, 4 grids. I want to make the leg a bit thinner, so just press 1 again. I'm just going to select the whole thing and then press S. Just bring that up again just to make it a little bit longer. And then let's add some modifiers on this. So I'm going to add the mirror modifier, and I'm just going to turn on X and Y. So now we have 4. And then also I'm going to add a bevel. So I'll just add a bevel right here. I'm going to make the segments maybe around 4. And then the offset, I'm just going to grab this and make it a lot smaller. So you could hold down Shift and then move that, and that way it'll move a lot slower. And I'll just make it pretty small, maybe a little bit bigger, and then I'll just shade that smooth. So now let's add those braces in between the legs. If your 3D cursor is like moved over here, you can press Shift C, and that'll just jump it to the center of the scene. Let's press Shift A, and I'm going to add a cylinder. And then right down here in the cylinder settings right behind me, you can click that to open it, and then the vertices 8 8 vertices. And then I'll tab into edit mode and we'll just scale that down. I'll press 1 for front view, press G and Z, pull it down, and then R to rotate, 90 degrees to rotate it 90 degrees. Now I want to get rid of these faces right here, so I'm going to press 3 to go to face select, click on this face, move over here, and then shift click on this face, and I'll press X and delete faces, because we don't need those faces, they'll just be going straight into the table legs. So now we can go to side view with 3, and I'll go into wireframe, and I'm just going to press G and move this over here, scale it down a little bit with S, and just something like that. And then I'll go to front view and press S and X and make it a bit bigger. And then I think I want to scale it a bit smaller, just make those a little bit thinner. I'll go back to 3 for side view. I'll press Shift D, duplicate this, and just put it down here. Okay, and then I think this top one could be a little bit higher. So I'll just deselect everything, press B, box select this top one, and then press G and move it up a little bit. Okay, that's better. Now let's add a subdivision surface. So I'll just press Control 1. We can just make these both 1, and then I'll just shade that smooth. So I use W. You can go Object, Shade Smooth. And let's add a mirror modifier. So I'll go Add Modifier, add a mirror right here. I'm going to turn off the X and turn on the Y, so it's mirrored across. And then I am going to duplicate these and put them on the other side, but before I do that, I'm going to add seams to them so that when we can UV unwrap it and we don't need to add seams to the other ones. So I'll tab into edit mode here, I'll press 2 to go to the edge select, I'll click on this one and then shift click on this one, and I'm clicking on the edges in the center of the stool so that they're harder to see. So the seams will be harder to see in the texture. So once I've selected those, I'll press Control E, and then I can click on Mark Seam. So now I'm just going to press U and unwrap. So now that that's unwrapped, I'll press Shift D, right click just to hop it back to its position, and then I'll press R, Z, type in 90, enter. And now you can see we need to adjust it a little bit, so I'll tab into edit mode. I'll go to 1 for front view, Z, and just move over to wireframe, and I'll select all of them and just move them up, and also rotate them a little bit. Just center them like that. So this is fully modeled now. I'm going to do a little bit more UV editing. So I'm going to tab into edit mode right here. If I go to front view with 1, you can see this is the front. So I'm going to move over to the back, and I'll press 1 to go to the vertice select. I'll Alt and click on this loop right here, and I'll press Control E and Mark Seam. And why we're doing this is so that when we UV unwrap the side of the top of the stool right here, it'll be able to open up, but then the top and bottom of the stool, those are pretty flat, so they'll UV unwrap pretty fine. But this will just allow that to open up because there's a cut right here. So let's press 3 to go to face select. I'm going to Alt click on this right here, and that'll select the whole loop, and then I'll Shift and Alt click on the 2 other loops. Oops, wrong one. Shift Alt, there we go. And then I'll press U and unwrap. And if we go to UV editing, we can see what it's done. So if we hadn't have made that cut right there, it wouldn't be able to open up. So it can open up and now it's nice and flat. And then let's just UV unwrap the top and bottom. So I'll just press Control I, and Control I is going to invert the selection. So everything that's not selected will be selected, and then everything that's selected will be deselected. So now that we've selected the top and bottom, I'll press U and just click on unwrap, and you can see those are really flat, so they just unwrap pretty well. So now that's done, and then these, you can see we've already unwrapped these, and since we added those seams right in there, it cut that open so that that can open up. And then we just need to unwrap this. So right now it's using the UV map that it had on default, because the default cube does have a UV map, but because this is longer, we want to re-UV unwrap it. So let's just press U. I'm going to click on Smart UV Project because this object is very square, and square objects work really well for the Smart UV Project, so I'm just going to use that. And we're probably going to need to adjust that slightly, but we'll do that when we add the texture. So now the whole thing is UV unwrapped. I'm just going to go File and Save again. And now let's just set up some lighting so that we can actually see this thing when we texture it. So I'm going to go back to the layout, and then over here, I'm going to click on this, the color right here on the background, and I'll just hit E for environment texture, or you can just select it. I usually just hit E though, and that is a really quick shortcut for hitting the environment texture. And then right here, I'm going to hit open. And I'm going to be using this HDRI, links in the description if you want to download this HDRI that I'm using, or just find your own one. So I'll just click on that, click on open image, and then let's just make sure that the color management is set to filmic. So I'm just going to click on these render settings. So click on the color management, make sure this is set to filmic, and then the look I'm going to make high contrast just to bump out the colors. It'll look a bit nicer. Okay, and then let's add a camera. So I'm going to press 1 for front view just to see where the front view is. I want to add the camera maybe about here. So I'll press Shift A and add a camera, and then I can just move where I want and press Control Alt number pad 0. And that'll hop the camera to where we are. And then I want to make this a square image, so I'll just go here, and I'm going to hover my mouse over this value. I'll press Control C to copy it. Then I'll move my mouse to the bottom value and press Control V. If I double tap G and then double tap Z, I can move it in and out like this. And then I found that on the camera settings, I like the focal length to be like 70 for something like this. I just find it to look a little bit better. Okay, and then I'll just press Z and move up for rendered mode, and we can see what we have. So a few things I'm going to do in the render settings. I'm going to go to film, and I'm going to make it transparent, and that'll make a transparent background. Let's add the materials now. So I'll just click on this top one here. I'm going to go over to shading, and then I don't want these here, so I'm just going to click, drag, and then drag back and let go. So I click right here, pull it out, pull it back in, and then let go just to remove those. I'll hit new. I'm going to call this wood, and I'm going to go into the camera view and just go into rendered mode just to see that. And then I'm just going to drag and drop the textures into the node editor from my file browser. So I'm just going to use the base color, the normal, and the roughness. So I'll pull in the base color and connect the color to the base color, and you can see it's starting to look like wood. I also want to go over here to the materials, and I can just grab this. Actually, I can just grab it right here, and I can drag it and drop it onto all the other objects. And then I'm also going to drag in the roughness map, and I'll just set the color space, I'm going to set to non-color, and plug the color into the roughness, and then I'll add in the normal. I'm going to set the color space for this non-color as well. I'll put the normal, I'll put the color into the normal, and then I'm going to need to add a normal map to convert that because it doesn't know what this is. So I'll press Shift A, I'm going to add a normal map and drop that in between there, and that'll convert this to normal data. Now I find that this wood color is a little bit bright, so I actually want to make it a little bit darker. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift A, add RGB curves, and drop the RGB curves in between the color and the principled. And then I can just turn this down to make it a little bit darker. And then I'm also going to add a brightness and contrast. So I'll just press Shift A, search for bright and contrast. And then I'm going to use the Node Wrangler feature to preview this. If you don't have the Node Wrangler, you can just go Edit, Preferences, and then on add-ons here, you can type in Node Wrangler and just enable this Node Wrangler add-on. It's a really great add-on. I use it all the time. So to preview what this node looks like, I'm going to press Control Shift and click. And that way I can preview what it looks like. So I'll just turn the brightness up 1 and then turn the contrast up 2. And that'll just give it a little bit more of a contrast. And then I can Control Shift click back on this principled just to see that material. So this is what it is without, and this is what it is after. So it's a little bit darker, a little bit nicer. I just like the colors of this better. So now I need to edit the UV map because you can see the wood grain is going this way and this way, and I want to change those. So I'm just going to go over here to UV editing, and then I'll move my mouse down just to go to the material preview. And then I also don't want these things here, so I'll press T to close this. I'll move my mouse over here, press T to close that. And then right here, I'm just going to click on this to turn that off just to get those out of the way. So I'll press 3 to go to face select, and then I'll Alt, click on this, and then Alt Shift, click on these. And I want to rotate these. Oop, there we go. So I want to rotate these the opposite way because the wood grain right now is going up and down, and I don't think that really looks good. I think it should be sideways. So since we've selected that, here it is. We can just press A to make sure that's selected. And then I'll press R for rotate, type in 90 and enter. And then we can also play around with the scale of that. So I think it looks a bit better if it's actually stretched a bit. So I'm gonna press S and X and just bring it down. And then I'll also press S and just scale it up a little bit. Then also the wood grain here, it doesn't really make sense that the wood grain would be going back and forth because this is a long piece of wood. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, select everything, and then I'll press R, 90 and enter. And I don't want the texture to be duplicated over and look exactly the same, but if you tab into edit mode, you can see we're still using the mirror modifier, so it's duplicating the same texture and it does look exactly the same. So you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm going to apply the mirror modifier, and then I'll just UV unwrap that. So I'll just press U, Smart UV Project, and you can see now you can see all of them. There's a bunch more, and then I'll press R, 90, enter, and now you can see they actually look a bit different. Each one is a little bit different because they're different places on the texture. And then I'll just scale this up a little bit. Okay, so I think the texturing and materials is all finished. I like how this looks. So now I'm going to add a ground and then set up some lighting, and then we'll render this out. So I'm going to go back into the layout right here. I'll press Shift A and I'm going to add a plane, and I'll scale this plane up, and then I'll press G and Z and bring this plane down. And you can actually go under the ground and then press G and Z and just bring it up until it's just barely sticking underneath it. Just like that. And then I'll scale this up even more so that it's covering the entire scene. And then I'm going to add another material to this. So I'll press New and I'll just make it a darker color. And then we're just going to go over here to the object settings, and in visibility, I'm going to click on Shadow Catcher, and that way it'll actually be transparent, but it's going to catch any shadows and keep those. And then I do want to add a few more lights just because right now it's a little bit boring lighting. So I'm just going to press Shift A and I'm going to add a plane. I will bring this plane over. I'll rotate it so it's facing our object, and I'll scale it up a little bit. And then I'm going to click over here on the materials, click on New, and I'll just click on this and press E, and that way it'll just go to an emission. So that's just a really quick way that I set this to an emission. I just click on this, press E, and it just sets it to an emission. And then I can go back into rendered mode and just make this brighter. And I think this makes the lighting look a lot nicer because now there's one main light on our object, and I do want to make it just slightly yellow. And then I do want to add like a bit of a rim light behind it. So I'll press Shift D and move it over and rotate it a bit and pull it over here. Maybe scale it on the Z a bit. And if for some reason your light is in the scene but you don't want it to be seen by the render, what you can do is click on the object properties, and then on the visibility right here, you can turn the ray visibility right here, the camera, turn that off. And that way there's still light. You can see there's still lots of light coming from it, but the camera can't see it. Okay, and there we go. I like how this lighting looks. So now I'm just going to go File and Save again, and then let's set up some render settings. So over here, I'm going to turn the render and viewport just to 200. You can just turn up the render though to 200. And then on the light paths, I'm going to turn total to 2, diffuse to 2, and glossy to 2, but everything else we can just turn to 0 because we don't need Blender to calculate any of this stuff. It'll just make render times faster. We can also turn both of these off, and then you can just hit F12 to render the image. I have a green water bottle, but because I'm using a green screen behind me, it makes the water bottle look like mostly transparent. It's kind of funny. Okay, and the render is finished. So let's go over to the compositing and we'll just do some quick compositing. I'm going to click on Use Nodes, and also I don't need this timeline, so I'll just remove it. And then I'm just going to press N just to close that panel right there. Now I'll press Shift A, search for alpha over, and then just drop an alpha over node right in there. And I'll press Shift A, search for the denoise, drop the denoise node in there. And then I'll put this image on the bottom one. because if we put it on the top one, this color is going to be on top of it and we won't be able to see it. So we'll just put this on the bottom one. And then right now we can't see any preview. That's because we need to press Control Shift and click on this denoise, and that'll add the viewer node. And if you don't have the node wrangler enabled, I don't think this is going to work. You can just press Shift A and add a viewer node, but if you're using the node wrangler, you can press Control Shift and click on that denoise, and then you can see it in the background. And then I'll press V to just move the background out a bit. And then this color here, I don't really like it being fully white because I feel like it kind of just feels blown out. So I'll just make it kind of a light gray color. And there we go. And you can see there's the shadow catcher. So it makes that shadow. I'm going to click over on this rendering tab. And then right here from render result, I'm going to go to viewer node so we can see the final thing. And then I'll press Shift Alt S to save the image. And I'll just save this as a PNG file on my computer. So just click Save as Image. And there we go. So that's the finished result. And if you'd like to support this channel, I do have a Blender Market store, and I also have a Patreon, and I also have a Gumroad store, and I'm selling some stuff on a few other sites. So all the links to those will be in the video description if you'd like to support the channel. This is just a great way to do that. So thanks for watching the tutorial. I hope it was helpful, and have a great day.